Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on a Sunday night. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend and happy to have you in for another edition of the Prime Time Show. It has been a wild and crazy offseason. If you're somebody who follows the Tennessee Titans, whether you're a fan or you're media like myself, whatever the case has been, it has been a lot. There's a great many storylines that we have seen. And there's one toxic one in particular that continues to kind of permeate everything. So we're going to go through the process of this offseason and talk about how big a role this has played in the Titans fan experience between A.J. Brown getting traded, Malik Willis getting drafted, the way that your season imploded at the end, and so much more. A lot of ground to cover on the Primetime Show. We will do, because it's a Sunday, this is a free site, later on in the program, and we've got a Titans tie for, well, I guess a Nashville tie for you on that as well, based on what I saw on Saturday night, or how little soccer I saw on Saturday night. But we'll get to that later on in the show. Before we get off and rolling, would love for you guys to share this show around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. If you're hanging out with us on Twitter, please retweet the show. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe to the A to Z Sports channel. You can do that, by the way, on Twitch as well. Go ahead and subscribe and make sure that you don't miss a minute of any of the live stream content that we provide to you here on the A to Z Sports Network. And, of course, Facebook Live, you can share not a public. We always love hanging out with our Facebook folks. That's the place that you can get things done on the A to Z Sports Facebook page and pass it around to your buddies. And now that more of you are here, we can go ahead and get this thing off and rolling. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on a Sunday night. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud, as always, to be presented by Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford, the best place for your new vehicle or a certified pre-owned vehicle. One of the state's largest selections can be found at Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Of course, we have the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com is where you go for your dream address without the stress. The official realtor of the Titans and the Preds can be found at GaryAshton.com. So it has been an insane offseason, and some of it has been toxic, some of it has been fun, some has been exciting, and some gets you ready for the football season, right? Any number of these. I was writing this down. Producer Reed and I were going through a number of topics that have just taken place since basically the middle of January, right? So if we're including how the season came to an end, there's Ryan Tannehill and what his career future looks like here. You have the new stadium that seems to be in progress with each passing week, and there's more developments all the time. There, of course, is the A.J. Brown trade situation, which has continued to permeate everything that we talk about this offseason. It has been super toxic. And then there's the drafting of Malik Willis. And really, I mean, we could lump Julio Jones getting cut into there. We could go any number of directions with what a crazy offseason this has been. But there's one, man, that just keeps dragging people back into the muck. And I want to talk about this together. In fact, I want to get your Two Rivers Ford take on this, if you would be so kind. The question that I would like to ask you is this: on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, please let us know what's been the most ridiculous storyline of the Titans offseason thus far. You can give us your response in the comment section. We can discuss them at length together. Let me know how you feel about the most ridiculous storyline of the Titans offseason. We'll talk about it. You can give your response. I'll give you mine here in just a second, right after I tell you about the people who present the Two Rivers Ford Take each and every night. That, of course, is Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford is where I got my new vehicle, my 2022 Ford Explorer XLT. I did the Built For You program, but you don't have to do the Built For You program if that's not necessarily something that you want to do. Maybe a new car isn't quite in your plans right now. That's okay. Two Rivers Ford has the state's largest selection of certified pre-owned vehicles and so many great things that come with that. There's a lot to look for in a Two Rivers Ford pre-owned vehicle like the Ford Blue Advantage, which means your pre-owned vehicle will be certified. You'll get things like 24/7 roadside assistance, Ford Pass reward points that can go towards oil changes and service. But best of all, each Two Rivers Ford Blue Advantage vehicle comes with a limited warranty, so you can breathe a little easier. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. So, what's been the most ridiculous storyline of the offseason? Omar goes for the root of the problem, right? Us not winning the AFC. He's talking about the Titans not winning the AFC. And there is so much this offseason that's the starting point for, right? That's the root cause of the issue. The thing that people gravitate towards the most to say, this is how the season ended. This is why it still hurts so badly. There are still, and I completely understand it. Like I said, I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to attend the playoff game in person. And I know all of you, in some form or fashion, if you're here, you're likely a Titans fan. All of you in some form or fashion watched the playoff game, right? Whether you're at a bar with your friends, whether you're hanging out at a buddy's house in the place where you communally come, whether that's your garage, your man cave, wherever that is, you're watching that game in January, and you watch the first offensive play result in an interception. You watch the last offensive play result in an interception, and you have an interception inside the 20 after Deontay Foreman, I think, breaks off. It was like a 40-yard run to get you there off a tip drill in the red zone. So a lot of hurt feelings, rightfully so, about how the season came to an end. So that's kind of the root cause of the issue, right? And then everything that I think has caused this to be such a poignant time for Titans fans, right? Where you feel like you had this thing in your grasp. And all of a sudden it was gone. It was gone just like that, right? It went so quickly, and it had been such a slog to build up to that divisional round. Cincinnati, first round bye. Julio looks good in week 18. Derek is going to rebound, and AJ is as right as he's ever been as far as the health is concerned. The defense kicks absolute ass and does so in the playoff game. But then all of a sudden, and I mean really, really early on into that game, you get kicked in the stomach. You get kicked in the stomach, and everything that you had built up for, that your expectations had built up for, that your emotions had built up for, hell, it felt like the cosmos was aligning in real time with the amount of rest that they got down the stretch with a late bye and a first round bye and Thursday night football being in December. So you had extended rest there. And finally, with all the health struggles that the team had, you're going to get the most complete version of the Tennessee Titans in 2021. And then it all goes to waste, right? So that's the root cause of why this offseason has been so tumultuous. Because Bryce Erickson says, bucket replays in my head every day. Will it ever stop? And I think there's a lot of emotions to that, right? And you'll remember that if you're a Titans fan for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life, you'll remember that. And so now everything that's come across the board since then, whether it's even the stadium a little bit, right? The stadium story has been a big one. AJ gets traded, and you're feeling like, okay, in this time where your team was as close as it's ever been to being capable of legit contention, well, they traded away probably the most important offensive player on the football team. And I understand that Derrick Henry is still on the football team, but I assign a higher long-term value to AJ and his position than I do to Derrick. And we've had that discussion before. I think most people are kind of, especially with where Derrick is in his career, and frankly, where Derrick was in that playoff game, not a full, version of himself that we're accustomed to seeing. That AJ thing hurts really, really bad after the fact. And then everything with the AJ thing, it just continues to spiral, right? In the same way, because I was critical of some Titans fans where I'm like, well, why can't you guys just let him go, right? There's a lot of stinging indictment there. We've talked about the playoff game. Titans fans are already in a not a great state mentally about how their team came to its end in 2021. And so you've got already this pent up angst. And then the AJ thing happens, and you find out that he asked for the trade, which makes you feel almost worse, I'd imagine, because not only is he not going to play here, not only did it come to a rocky end, but he asked out of here, which was the ultimate reason why A.J. Brown does not play for the Tennessee Titans anymore. You have things like the Julio Jones thing, which happened so long ago in March, and really throughout the course of the season, I feel like most people got over it, but we still talked about the implications of them not having a second-round pick because of Julio Jones. And then all of a sudden, after a year, and really after 10 games that he played in, really, and not 10 games that he finished all the way through or started all the way through, but a very, very small sample size of what the Julio Jones experience was going to be like. That was like a blip on the radar of this offseason, and also a really consequential thing. Then you come through all of that, right? You come through all of that, and you find Malik Willis in the draft. Malik Willis lands to you at 86 overall, and you start to get that hope back. AJ handles himself the way that AJ's handled himself. He keeps drawing people back in, even as Titans fans, I think, largely have moved on from AJ. He keeps bringing it back up. He keeps ripping off the scab with things like the camp thing that we're going to talk about here in just a second, because Roy L. Wright brings up guys rehashing for the 210th time is old, nothing new from Buck. But here's why it matters, because you're right. We've talked about all of this shit. We've talked about all of this shit, and we've talked about all of it ad nauseum. But here's why I'm kind of going through all these different storylines, right? Because it's not just about AJ. It's not just about the stadium, Julio, Tannehill, Malik, whatever, Treylon Burks, whatever you want to look at. It's about how we got to this point, right? And why, because I'm sitting on the internet on Friday, or I think it was after I got done with radio for the day. And I was just, I was hanging out on the couch or waiting for, actually, I didn't do anything Friday night. So I was probably just scrolling, watching a movie or watching Netflix or something on my couch at home. And I see this whole thing about A.J. Brown in this camp, and the fact that it's still a thing, and the fact that he continues to make it a thing. And then there's the Derrick Henry extension stuff, and people already starting to get bent out of shape about, okay, well, is Derrick's situation going to get muddled the way that A.J. Brown's situation got muddled? There's agents involved. Why is anything around a contract extension coming up for Derrick Henry with 2 years left on the deal? Why is this another thing, just another thing to pile onto this offseason? And so when you bring up it's nothing new, true, but it's the psychology of why all this shit seems to bother people so much that I'm fascinated by, how we got to this point. And I think that when you look at it, because I was trying to dissect this for myself, and I was trying to figure out, okay, why is it still causing this kind of a reaction when AJ's tweeting about this camp stuff, right? Where he gets on social media and he's responding to something that somebody sent him about this godforsaken football camp that he was supposed to have at Montgomery Bell Academy. I think it was supposed to be this weekend, as a matter of fact, if my dates are correct. And still people are sending me this thing, or, I'm seeing A to Z Sports, the place that I work, write about this thing. And because they know, the people, like a lot of people who write, I write sometimes, but I don't write a lot of the aggregation stuff, right? A to Z does a lot of the aggregation stuff too. And they're writing these aggregated articles about AJ Brown makes statement on camp and all these different things. And then I read the comments from AJ Brown. He's releasing a statement about unspecified concerns related to Titans fans reacting to his trade. And the football camp in Tennessee, he decided to pull out of it. He's sorry that the kids aren't going to be able to attend the camp, but he has no choice because of the way that some adults have been acting towards him in Tennessee, which is fine. That all may be real stuff. That all might be completely reasonable. In fact, I see some of the shit that people send him on the internet. It's awful. This is a 24-year-old kid. People behave, grown ass human beings are behaving in embarrassing ways toward a 24-year-old kid on the internet that I find largely despicable. But at the same time, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at AJ and I'm saying that statement serves no one. It serves no one. Log off. Enough. Like, I'm not a shut up and dribble person. Never, ever in my life have I felt that way. But there has been so much from AJ that continues to suck people back in, that continue to breed this kind of hate on the internet, these kind of terrible interactions, this kind of stuff that won't release me from an AJ Brown conversation on May the 22nd when he hasn't been a Titan for damn near a month. And there's all these kind of things that keep swirling where Titans fans have had one of the most contentious off seasons ever for all the reasons that we just laid out. Because I'm trying to figure out the psychology of this, right? Like I've looked at this so many different ways. I can't myself understand it, but I'm also not thinking about it the way that you guys might think about it. Because it doesn't make any difference to me one way or the other. This does not affect me one way or the other than the fact that this is something that you guys, or at least a portion of you guys, are clearly passionate about. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, why is this still happening? And then I come to the resolution of, well, it's all of these things that are mounted up on the tension, that have really, really built up and made Titans fans want to fight because they already feel like they got their asses kicked and they want a piece of somebody, no matter who that somebody ends up being. And it ends up imploding on itself because it's the guy who you spent so much time loving. It's AJ. And he keeps sucking you back into this stuff. That's why, for me, I look at all the different stuff that's happened this offseason. Honestly, the craziest part of this offseason was how we got there, was how the Titans got there, because of what kind of explosion or implosion it ended up causing. Ripples across the city of Nashville, really across the league, in the same way that the Packers collapsed and it was the talk of the NFL, a first round out divisional round. The Titans were as catastrophic a playoff end. And so that was probably the craziest thing. But the thing that keeps refreshing that wound through the transitive property is the AJ Brown storyline, because he won't let, in the same way that some Titans fans won't let AJ go, he just doesn't want to seem to let you guys go in a weird kind of back-asswards way.
Did you request the trade from Tennessee? And if so, can you help explain why?
I'm going to try not to get into all that, but, I'm not going to look backwards, moving forward. And, like I said, I'm excited.
Fans in Philadelphia going to learn about you?
My passion for the game, my passion to win. That's all I care about is winning. I'm not a big regular season guy. I want to win it. I want to win it all, and that's my expectations coming into this building. I'm not trying to put expectations on the team, but I want to win. I haven't won anything since I was in high school, so I know this is a great team, great organization that can get it done.
So that was AJ Brown about less than a month ago, talking about what got him there. That's been, of all the different things that have happened this offseason, that probably has been the craziest to me. Maserati Max says, I don't care what he does from here on now, only focused on the Titans players. And I think that's completely fair, right? Like, I think that's the headspace that most people want to be in. But the problem is, Mac, like, I'm not worried about you, right? I'm not worried that you're not going to be able to move on. I'm worried about the idea that AJ, for his own well-being, and listen, far be it from me to tell anybody how to behave on the internet because I'm hugely unprofessional on the internet on a regular basis, even on this show. I mean, I host shows, right? But I'm not really like a professional broadcaster. Nobody's going to look at me and think Jim Nance. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not buttoned up. I'm not FCC safe most of the time, which is insane that I do 3 hours of radio because I find, there, at least I have fail safes for when I cuss and when I say language that I probably shouldn't say. But the point being is I don't like to sound preachy, but I cannot help but look at this guy and think he has some kind of social media addiction. You know what I'm saying? Because when he puts out that statement, all I'm thinking is, yeah, man, you should never put yourself in a position to feel threatened, like physically threatened. If you feel threatened, and people have been making threats towards him, but also he has to know that this is going to bring yet more of the same kind of things that he is actively trying to prevent, or that he's saying that he doesn't want. And I'm not saying that he's doing it on purpose because it's almost like a real life social media addiction. And I have a social media addiction. Many of you probably have a social media addiction. Thank God that you do, because this is a social media show. And if you didn't, maybe half of you wouldn't be here. I don't know. But in a way that it's been so toxic because it keeps pulling people back into the fray. And I hate it. I hate, one, because I'm tired of talking about this, but producer Reed and I were sitting on the show, sitting on the phone about an hour and a half ago. And I said, Reed, I don't want to do this AJ Brown thing, but I know that this is the thing that the most people are going to have an opinion on. So we did the AJ Brown thing. And we figured out a way to like talk about it within the context and, not just rip AJ Brown or rip Titans fans or rip the Titans for trading him, whatever, but like, how did we get here and why does this still happen? And I think it's fascinating, but also at some point, man, it's really, really toxic stuff for both sides. AJ has become so dramatic and immature, says Nika on Facebook Live, immature in my eyes since all of this. Sad case. And here's the thing, and then we'll move on, because I've got some good stuff on the stadium that I didn't think was good enough to lead primetime with, because I don't want to bog you guys down with numbers. But the stadium stuff, the latest stadium developments from Friday, or something we'll get to in a second. We'll do a news portion of this. But I just want to touch on this comment, and then we'll move on. He's 24, right? Like, I'm not much older than AJ, but I'm old enough that I know what an immature jerk I was at 24, right? And I'm not saying that AJ Brown's an immature jerk, but like, I don't expect a 24-year-old to be super mature, right? Especially some are, and I think that's a credit to them. Derek was an exceedingly mature player through this entire process. He's also got a different kind of personality, right? Look at Lawan. God, Lawan. Lawan at, what is he? I think he's 30, is a much different person. And still, maturity, you could slap any number of people with immaturity or maturity, whatever. He strikes me as naive. He strikes me as just a kid, even to say that is weird because he's a giant human being and he's only 4 years younger than me. And I look at that and I say, yeah, he seems like a naive kid, even as I understand me calling him a kid is, I may not be the best example of that. But I mean, think about how much more life experience you have at 30 as opposed to 24, or I'm going to be 29 in a couple of months. How much more life experience I have at 29 than at 24, even as I'll never know, or, maybe if I start making Stephen A. Smith money or Tom Brady money, maybe I'll know what it is to make $25 million a year. But in the meantime, not right now. Xavier says, Buck, you're old. Yeah, I'm getting there. I feel it every day. Trust me. It happened really, really fast, Xavier. I hate it. I hope you don't get old. I hope I don't get much older, but I'm getting older every damn second, and I feel it in my bones, and I hate it. Anyway, let's talk about the stadium. Speaking of old things that bones need replaced, let's talk about the Nissan Stadium, shall we? So we put the AJ stuff to bed. No more camp stuff. If he tweets, don't tweet him back. Like, I don't know. I don't know how much more we can do this. And hopefully we don't have to do this again. Anyway, let's talk about the situation for the Titan Stadium. There were some news developments. Now, maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. I'll give you the updates on it if you didn't see Friday's news. But if you did, let me ask this question of you. Did Friday's news affect your opinion on a new Titan Stadium at all? Again, if you didn't see it, I'll explain it to you. If you did, let me know your feeling on it. Did Friday's news affect your opinion on a new Titan Stadium at all? And by the way, an important programming note, that Mayor John Cooper is supposed to be, I was talking with his PR director as early as this morning, as a matter of fact. Mayor John Cooper, if you're a Nashville resident, he is expected to be on my radio show at some point this week. We're still working out the logistics because Mayor Cooper is going to come in the studio, and there's going to be, we're obviously going to talk a lot about the Titan Stadium. I mean, that's basically all we're going to talk about, the Titan Stadium. So we'll have more updates on that for you later in the week if that kind of stuff interests you. But if you do not have Friday's news, I'll give it to you here in just a second. You guys let me know your opinion about it. Again, we'll get to that momentarily, right after I tell you about our friends at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Speaking of stadiums and somebody whose face is all over stadiums, that's Gary. Gary is the official realtor of the Tennessee Titans. He's the official realtor of the Nashville Predators. And he's the official realtor of me. I bought my home coming up on 3 years ago with the Ashton team. Could not have been happier with the process. That's because I got the intel edge that helped me succeed. The intel to make sure that I won the buyer battle in this hugely competitive Nashville real estate market, and not just for buyers in this crazy real estate market here in Middle Tennessee, but also the intel to help you sell your home without any staging or showings, to capitalize on your home equity and win the buyer battle right now. That's what the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage does for you. GaryAshton.com is where you go. So, AJ tweeted, Mason Kinsey, it's your little time, bro. What did I say, Mark? I will not be Mason Kinsey'd again. I will not. You will not hijack this show with Mason Kinsey stuff. I don't care what AJ tweeted about Mason Kinsey. Again, I wish the best things humanly possible for Mason Kinsey in his career. If it ends up to the point where we have to, the fact that we've even talked about it today violates the rule, but it's okay. I hope AJ's right. I hope Mason has a tremendously successful career. Cody Holzer says, I wanted a new stadium regardless, so it didn't sway my opinion, but it made me feel like it was much more likely to happen. Here's the thing, okay? Because I'll give you the updates here in a second, and I'll tell you from where we were to where we've gotten in basically the course of 2 months, because it is a very real thing. This is going to happen. And I knew as soon as it was put out into the news cycle that they were exploring this possibility, that this was always the way that we were going to go. There was always going to be a new Titan Stadium in the future. Now, whether that takes 5 years, whether that takes 8 years, that's a thing for it to be complete, right? For it to get all the financing, for the construction process to get underway, for whatever different deals that need to be done between the state, the Davidson County taxpayer, the city of Nashville, the NFL, whatever, all these different things that need to coalesce. However long it takes to get us there, nobody has the answer to that question right away. But I knew we were always going to get there as soon as they put that out into the news cycle, right? As soon as it was leaked that the Titans were exploring this possibility. But now what we've seen is substantial developments. And on Friday, Burke Nihill, who's the president of the Tennessee Titans, many of you remember Steve Underwood, long time. I think he was president 2 different times of the Tennessee Titans. Burke Nihill is now the president and CEO. And he said in front of the Metro Sports Authority on Friday that the new stadium is the best long-term solution. Here's what he told them. And stick with me because I know numbers radio or numbers broadcasting is not always the best. But if you care about the Titans and you care about the city of Nashville, these are important. So Nissan Stadium is going to require $1.2 billion just to renovate it, with another $900 million in upgrades in order to remain relevant through 2039, which is the term of the current lease. Okay. $2.1 billion total. The new stadium is expected to cost between $1.9 billion and $2.2. So $2.1 billion is what the Metro Sports Authority and the analysis that the Titans contracted AECOM Hunt, a construction company, to do the numbers on. $2.1 billion to keep Nissan Stadium relevant through the current lease, or up to $2.2 billion to just build a new one. Now, a lot of this stuff, where $700 million in private money is coming from the Adams family, you got about $1.5 billion in public money, which would be a new record as far as public finances for an NFL stadium. So when that came out, the line had been, or the line that we had been given is, yeah, Davidson County taxpayers aren't going to pay for this. And maybe this only affects a small portion of you, because not all of you live in Davidson County. You guys are all over the world, right? This is an internet show. But I think for the purposes of those of you who like to attend games, who will want to keep tabs of all things going on with the Titans, this is really relevant stuff. So when you look at this, it's a much different story than the city and the Titans and the people pushing this thing forward had initially served up, which was that it would not be publicly funded. Now we're talking about probably $1.5 billion in public funding that's going to, including the $500 million in bonds from the state, including the hotel motel tax that's going to be raised to help cover the cost of this thing here in the city of Nashville. There's a lot of different things that are going to come together, and there will be a degree of burden on taxpayers here in Middle Tennessee. But did it change your opinion? Because I feel like a lot of people wanted this thing regardless. Are there any models with a retractable roof? I want to be able to open it up. Here's what I've been told over and over again, Derek. It's not going to be retractable. Don't expect it to be retractable. It's not going to be retractable. It's not necessarily going to be like a generic dome either. Like, I think the kind of roof that they're looking at is the kind that they have at SoFi, where it's technically open air. I don't know how big the gap is between the ceiling of the stadium, or rather the roof of the stadium, and like the part of, basically between the structure itself and the roof. There's a gap, right? Where you guys remember that? I think it was a Chargers-Raiders game where there was a lightning delay, even though SoFi has a roof and there's not like enough room for the lightning strikes to be able to legitimately affect it. Anyway, Neil Patel says, I don't mind it, season ticket member, but all them upgrades they did last 2 years, lights, speakers, just went to waste. Yeah, it's true, right? And by the way, there's already, those come from Davidson County taxpayer burdens. Now, we're still probably, we're talking probably 5 or 6 years away, optimistically, from the Titans having this new stadium built. So you're still going to get use out of that at Nissan Stadium for the foreseeable future. The field is open to the elements, but all the seats are covered, says Monsoon. Yes, that's exactly right. We get taxed so much bullshit, we might as well pay a tax for something that we enjoy doing, says Stephen Birdwell, which is probably fair. Puka says, build it like Wembley, where overhang protects fans. Again, it's not going to be, it's my understanding that there will be a roof, but it will not be retractable. And we will continue to keep tabs on that. But that's the model that they seem to have selected to move forward. Not retractable, not open air, not canopy style, but more like SoFi. I don't know whether it's going to be translucent or not, but this is the kind of stuff that they're exploring right now. And we told you guys that this was going to be the path down in March when I had Nate Rao from Axios on my radio show. And we talked about a lot of the details and how much further we've gotten since, I think, the end of March to where we are now, where it seems like this is really gaining traction.
So I think the best way to have this conversation is for me to just ask you, Nate, where are we now with the stadium proposal? Because it sounds like with each passing day and with each legislative meeting regarding it, that this becomes a little more real. So where are we currently in this process on the reporting?
Yeah. Well, where we are is, for many months, maybe even I would say years, the Titans had been working toward renovating Nissan Stadium. And they'd gotten to a point where they had, a sense of how much that renovation would cost, and have been talking with the city and the state about, how they could work out a financing plan for that. And earlier this year, you know, they were getting down into the really detailed cost estimate phase of this and realized it was going to be significantly more expensive than they had thought. And that kind of had shifted the conversation, I think, over the last several weeks to the possibility of building a whole new stadium, right? And the first big piece so when you're going to go down that path, it's how are we going to pay for this thing, right? Like,
Right.
This is and in other cities, it's been in the neighborhood of about $2 billion for major new stadiums, setting aside the LA stadium, which is really a one-off.
Yeah, that's Walmart money. That's a different kind of money.
Yeah, we shouldn't use that as a point of reference here. But the first big piece of that puzzle for answering that question came this week with the governor proposing in his amended budget, as you just explained, $500 million in bonds to help pay for an enclosed roof stadium. And, you know, that proposal still needs to be approved by the politicians in the legislature, so that's not a done deal. But that is a major, you know, first step toward a new roofed stadium in Nashville.
So since that interview with Nate, the state government did approve the $500 million in bonds for the Tennessee Titans, and now we are looking at being very, very close to getting this project underway. Now, the start date for it is something that I had not seen. I believe that might have been discussed on Friday when Burke Nihill went in front of the Metro Sports Authority. But $1.8 billion to keep the stadium up to snuff through 2039. The obvious alternative is to build the new stadium based on those projections. And we'll keep you updated with that. And I'll let you know when Mayor John Cooper is going to be on the radio show, and we can bring some of that back for a primetime episode. All right, let's wrap things up with This Is a Free Site here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch on the Primetime Show. The question that I have for you guys is this: who form tackles better, the Titans defense or Nashville SC, Nashville Soccer Club security? If you haven't seen this video, you're going to like it. It is a question that I think could be made. Legitimately. Who form tackles better, the Titans defense or Nashville SC security? Let me know on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Twitch. We will discuss here in just a second. Yes, the start date was discussed. Karen O'Keefe brings up the start date of the stadium. Karen, can you tell me when that was? Because the reporting out of that press conference is not something that I saw a start date on. Perhaps you saw something that I did not. So I'd appreciate it if you had that available, and if not, I'll be able to figure it out myself. Security, hands down, says Tim Park. Puka says, who was the crazy woman? That was an amazing tackle last night. Sign that man, J-Rob. And then I'm also asked if I stayed through the SC Lightning delay. Now, you guys know I have season tickets to Nashville SC. I did not. I watched 15 minutes of soccer. I waited about 30 minutes. 35 minutes on the concourse. And I said, if I'm going to spend money on $15 beers here, I might as well spend money on $15 cocktails at a bar, because I don't like beer and I want to go drink tequila, and there's bars all around the stadium. So I went to a bar afterwards and I said, what the hell with this game? Now, the game ended up being a good one until it sounds like Nashville SC blew it. They had the 2-1 lead, and then there was an equalizing goal that had it end in a draw. But regardless, during that nearly 3-hour delay, there were some shenanigans on the field and off the field. And one that happened on the field I thought was handled pretty well by Nashville SC security.
Is she out?
You hear Stu Holden in the broadcast booth, in the Fox Sports broadcast booth, go, oh, is she out? Let's watch again. Let's review on the tape, shall we?
she out?
He said, "Oh, is she out?" It did seem like that. I hope the young woman is okay, because that was a tough scene. Mark Jones taking the question entirely too seriously. Titans defense: Big Jeff, Bud Dupree, Landry, Z Cunningham, David Long can tackle pretty good. It's pretty well, first and foremost. And yes, take the question just a little less seriously, Mark, and watch somebody get tackled on the field of a soccer game, for God's sakes. There's always got to be somebody who ruins the fun for the rest of us. Anyway, it's been a great show. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. Radio show is going to be a great time tomorrow. Join us from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. If you missed any of the radio show live, there's a podcast available to you. It's called The Buck Rising Show in your favorite podcast app. A lot more details on the stadium stuff that we'll be able to share. And I don't know if Lucas has told me who is on the radio show as of tomorrow, but yeah, I don't have time to check my text right now. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys tomorrow night on A to Z Sports Primetime.